Hi, it's Gail with Traders Help Desk, and this is the market overview for this week, July 19th. Now, what I want to do is start with the multi-chart scanner because the scanner allows us to monitor multiple time frames on multiple symbols. So I want to go ahead and start by calling your attention to the fact that we are overextended on a lot of different markets. Okay, so the first one is you would see that you have 69 and negative 47 on the 180-minute gold chart. Then, if you go down to the NASDAQ, you can see that all of these time frames, which is 45, 187.20, all of those are overextended on the ADX. They're also overextended on the RSI on 2 time frames. You also see that you're already seeing short divergence coming in. That does not mean that you go short in the futures market. Now, if you wanted to do like a binary trade tomorrow morning to the short side, you're out all week, you could potentially do that out of the money. I would take a very cheap binary. Those are the only ones that I know of that you could do at the moment. You can also see on the Dow, we've had a magenta peak. Now, this one has already retraced back to the ATR. It actually did that on Friday. You also see on the S&P 500 that you have short divergence, and of course that magenta peak came in. The next ones I would be looking at, of course, the Swiss franc. You have here a value of 75. You also see that you have long divergence already. That tells me that we're probably going to get a retracement tonight. Then on the Canadian, on both the 720 and the 1440, you have long divergence with values at 80. So far, those magenta peaks have not come in. You do see that you've had one on the 180-minute chart. It has retraced to within 22 ticks of the ATR. Okay, on the 720-minute chart, if that magenta peak comes in, and it is not in yet, if it comes in, you would look to the 45-minute. That ATR would be blue. Right now it's red. You would wait for it to turn blue, and then they will come back and they will test that area for support to push price up. It is not come in yet. So, on the scanner, there's a lot of information that you can see, and some of these trades will be setting up for later this week. So let's go and let's look at gold. Remember on gold, the 180-minute chart is almost at the point of being oversold. So we could see a potential for gold to go up this week. Now, as it stands right now, the ATR is about 113 ticks away from price. So if this magenta peak were to come in on the 180-minute chart, you would look to the 12-minute for that entry. Now, I do think that we're going to flip this ATR over here, and then I think we will go back and we will test it. That's what I would be looking for to see if we get any upward movement on the higher time frames. So, you'll flip this from red to blue, then it will come back and test it. So, in other words, it's going to make a push up, then it's going to come back, it's going to test for support, then it will continue up. Until you see this pattern, don't try to trade that from the 45-minute, not for an upward movement. Now, on crude, and again, we're going to go back over here and we're going to make sure that we don't have any exceptionally high values, and we don't. So, in my opinion, right now, the only thing for crude is to continue down, probably come back and test this low at 50.50. I do not want to go against the trend from the higher time frame because I do not have anything that says, hey, we're going to get a retracement. All right, let's go and look at the Dow Jones. Now, the Dow Jones, we have had some upward movement. We did have this magenta peak here, but it has already completed that retracement. We're not in the situation right now to get a magenta peak on the 1440. So, in my opinion, we're going to see a retracement back to this ATR. So we have an upward push. It will come back to test the ATR. It may only make it as far as this green line. This is the area that I want to read the volume at. That's the area that's going to tell me whether I want to go long or short. Now, over on the NASDAQ, notice that we have all this short divergence and we have extremely high ADX values and extremely high RSI values. That tells me that this market is overextended. What I would want to see for the 45-minute, you will make a magenta peak. And a magenta peak means that the ADX gives you a pointed top just like a mountain. And then right here, you will have a magenta dot. Sometimes it's yellow because it's a subsequent peak. Okay. If that occurs, I know to go down to the 3-minute chart and look for Buddha. If we get, and this is what I'm hoping, is we get a magenta peak on the 720, we would expect this ATR to flip to red, which means it's going to come down. Then it will go back and test for support. It is at that level of support that I would be testing for volume. I would be reading the volume to make sure no buyers come in because this will be a counter trend trade and you want to make sure that there's no buyers coming into that market so that you can potentially get a push back down to this red line at about 45.60. Now, on the ES, you see that we did make this downward movement. It has come back to this yellow line here. In fact, you see that you have just about a triple zone area right here. So this is where I would be reading the volume. I think buyers are going to decrease, and that would give me an entry to the downside. Okay. Then on the 6E, I do think we will come back and we will test this line right here. I think we may get volume divergence there. If we do, we will go back and test this ATR. And when it comes back to test that ATR, if there is a divergence in the buyers, then you would get a short position. Over on the British pound, you can see that you really don't have any areas here that are telling you that you are overextended. So what I would expect is more downward movement. I would expect the British pound to at least come back and test this area. More than likely, it's going to be at least to the green line. Once it gets there, I would want to read the volume, see if sellers are still coming in strong, or if at this time we get a magenta peak and it pushes back to the ATR. If it does push back to the ATR, which is around 56.32 right now, again, you just read the volume. If there are no buyers, then you could actually take another short position to the downside. Now, over on the Swiss franc, you do have an ADX value at 75. You also have long divergence. It is 29 ticks back to the ATR right now. That's not large enough for me to want to trade. So instead of trying to trade this back to the ATR, what I would do is wait, let it get to the ATR, and then see if there is an entry to the downside. And as you can see, over here we pulled back to the ATR. You got an entry and it went lower. That's what I would anticipate again. Now, up on the Canadian, we do have a magenta peak that came in, I believe it was on Friday. We have retraced back to the ATR, which is 22 ticks away currently on the 180-minute chart. I think we're going to get the magenta peaks in here. That's 131 ticks and 192 ticks. You already see that we're getting the long divergence. Now, this has been here since last week. What I would anticipate is that we will, on the 45-minute chart, we're going to flip this ATR. When we do that, we're probably going to get some congestion dots. So we would have congestion dots, and it will come up and it will test these congestion dots. That's going to put the ATR down here. So you're going to have a push up, then come back and test for support before this pushes back up. It's on the push up that I want to get into this trade, and specifically it would be on the 45-minute chart. I can already tell you, you are getting some weakness in that downtrend just looking at the bars, okay? So until that pattern develops, I would not be going long on the Canadian. Now let's look at the Aussie. On the Aussie, we don't have any markets that are overextended on the ADX. We have no markets that are overextended on the RSI. So my expectation is that we're going to see lower lows on the Aussie. I'm not going against this trend without something that says, hey, you're overextended. And right now, there's nothing that says we are overextended. So I would at least expect it to test that low, possibly even move lower. Hopefully, it will give us a magenta peak, and then we could read the volume at the ATR and potentially enter a trade to the downside. As it is right now, because you don't have a magenta peak, you could always go into a 3-minute chart provided that you do not have any gaps on that chart. And again, we do not trade charts that have gaps between the close of one bar and the open of the next bar. So I hope this market overview helps you this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the trading room on Thursday.